And welcome back. This is Steve with Refined Nature. Y'all ready to pour another one? We sure are. In this video, we're going to show you today how we constructed this beautiful, stunning contemporary coffee table. We started off with a piece of alligator juniper, which is native to the southwest part of the country. It's nicknamed alligator because of the texture in its bark, which kind of looks like an alligator, I guess you could say. So we got everything all squared up, and it looked like this piece had been in a fire at one time. So we went ahead and we got a screwdriver and just got out some of the debris that was left around the knotted areas in the wood. Then we got our grinder, and we kind of wanted to grind off a couple of the ash burns and scars that were still left on the wood, just to make it a cohesive bond with the epoxy when we were ready to pour it, because you always want a clean, debris-free surface. That way you ensure that that bond is tight and solid whenever you pour your epoxy. Then we went ahead and sanded the top of the slab just to take off all the mill marks and just to be working with a nice clean surface. It looks good visually, it looks good for the camera, and it looks kind of professional. So we always kind of err on the side of caution and make sure that everything's cleaned up and looking nice. We went ahead and sealed up our HDPE frame, which we constructed ourselves out of good old HDPE. It's the best material to use for these epoxy pours. Then I went ahead and I taped the underside of all the knots and the cracks that were at the bottom of the wood. That way we could preserve the epoxy inside the wood when we were pouring it. Nice and level. Then we went ahead and we popped it in there just to make sure everything was going to fit. It was going to be tucked in nice and snug. It was. Everything was looking good. Then what I did is I got some super fast curing epoxy, and I put a few drops on the underside of the piece. That way it would adhere to the form better and hold it down. That way it wouldn't be floating around all over when I poured. For this particular project, we used close to 6 gallons of Upstart Epoxy's Deep Pour Epoxy. Excellent product. If you haven't tried it, I really recommend you guys give it a shot. It's well worth it and you won't be disappointed. So we poured, and we poured some more. For this particular one, we were going to go ahead and use a non-metallic pigment. So we used a water-based pigment that was just plain old black. We really wanted to give off a clean and crisp and contemporary look for this coffee table. So we didn't want a lot of bells and whistles and flare and swirls and all that stuff for this table. When mixing a high amount of epoxy like this, in this particular case, this was 3 gallons, it takes a little while, and you want to make sure that you're blending those two parts perfectly and that you have them completely blended. So we usually take up to about 10 minutes with a big volume like that. So we went ahead and poured out the first 3 gallons, followed by another 2.5 gallons. When doing big pieces like this that have a lot of holes and knots and little cracks and nooks and stuff like that, it's always crucial to make sure you cover all those little areas. Remember how I said earlier how we taped the bottom? This is why. We wanted to keep the epoxy in here so that way it would level up nicely and we could really put the emphasis on those smaller details. Whenever working with big tables like these, you always want to make sure your detail is on point. I mean, a lot of people can just pour epoxy and it'll look nice, but you always want to pay attention to detail. Just a quick little pro tip. Then we went ahead and we unscrewed these screws from the HDPE form, popped it out, got our pry tool ready, and it was time to take it out of the mold. This is a really fun process because it really gets to let you see what's underneath, what happened underneath, if you got a lot of epoxy that leaked under, if your efforts to secure the base were good or not. And it's really fun to pop out because it just comes out so crisp and so clean, just like that. So after that, it's always crucial that you go outside and you plane both ends of it. That way you make sure that you don't have any excess, any residue, anything that's left over from the initial pour, and it cleans up the edges, it cleans up the overall appearance, and it starts to give you an idea of what your piece is really going to look like. As you can see, it takes off a real thin layer of the epoxy and it starts to reveal the combination and the blend of the wood and the epoxy. So, in other words, all your efforts will be coming to fruition very soon. Then I like to take off a sliver on all 4 sides of the table. That way it reveals any wood that was on the form that didn't get covered by the epoxy, and it really just kind of completes the piece. So for the short edges on the table, I went ahead and I used my circular saw with a guide a straight guide that you can run your circular saw against to ensure that you're getting a crisp, clean, straight edge. It's a little more work, but it's well worth it. You don't want something like this on a gorgeous table like this to have a flaw or an imperfection that would defeat the purpose of all your hard work. So we got everything all mounted up, ran the saw against the guide, and it was a nice clean cut the whole way through, just like we like it. Then it was on to sanding. We went ahead and started at 40 grit, and we went all the way up to 1,000 on this table. I really wanted to make that black shine and pop. It's really a cool look to see when you have the epoxy really shined up and the wood when it keeps its matte finish. A lot of people hate to sand, and I used to hate to sand too, but when you have good tools and good machinery to get your sanding purposes done, it makes it so much easier, and you're really happy with the finished product. And it's one of the most tranquil things to do when working on these tables, for me anyways. So after that, we went ahead and pulled out the router, and we routed the edges with the chamfer bit. We wanted a nice, clean, sophisticated, crisp edge on there, just to complement the way that this sleek and classy table was gonna come out. And then it was time for the good old flood coat. We went ahead and poured 3 liters of Upstart Epoxy's tabletop epoxy, which is another excellent product. Once again, if you haven't tried it, try it. Trust me. Got it all mixed up, looked over the table. There was that little shine from the epoxy I was talking about earlier, and the wood still looks really cool and gorgeous. And it was time to pour that flood coat. Look how cool that looks. As soon as you pour that on there, you really see a sweet revelation and a sweet, just a pop that comes out. Some people are kind of anti-flood coating. They think it's too hard, or they think that, it's advanced. And you know what? It is. Because you really need to be in a pretty dust-free environment, and you've got to babysit these flood coats. You really do. You want to make sure there's no divots. You want to make sure there's no surface tension. You want to make sure there's no lint, anything that can get in there. And that part of the process is really tough. But the cool thing about flood coats is that wood is preserved forever under there. They're easy to clean. You don't have to go back and shine them. You don't have to go back and wax them. You don't have to go back and buff them and retouch them up. If anything were to ever really happen bad on them, all you would have to do is sand it and give it another flood coat, and you're back to square one. I mean, just look how beautiful that is. Look how stunning and captivating it is to look at that. Then it was time to go ahead and take off the bubbles on the underside from the flood coat. Once we ensured everything was good, there was no lint, there was no dust or anything on the top side. We got these scraped off. We went ahead and sanded this really good. We sanded it up to 220 on the bottom because we were gonna put a thin layer of oil to preserve the underside of the wood. We went ahead and used walrus oil for this one because it's pretty fast acting and it's easy to put on, super easy. You just pour it on there, rub it on, let it dry for a few hours, and it's good to go. That's why we went ahead and used this for the underside. If you're gonna do an epoxy resin table, folks, you gotta do both sides. Some people try and get away with just doing the top, and that's just not cool. If people are paying good money for these tables and you don't treat and handle the bottom as pretty much as good as you do the top, then that's not really fair, you know what I mean? Always also select cool legs. There are thousands and thousands of really cool legs to choose from, either on Amazon, Etsy, anywhere, even if you have it custom fabricated. Always go with cool legs that are really going to complement your piece. It'll pay off in the end, it'll look complete, and it'll look like something that was done professionally. That's what people like to see, folks. And always make sure that you measure them up, you take time to make sure everything is square with the world. That's imperative, and that's the key to any stunning piece that you create. It's always covering point A to point Z and not skipping any steps in between. Always make sure of that, folks. And as a result, did I lie? I don't think I did. This is a really, really cool table. It was really fun to make, and we're really glad that we could share it with you. If you want to see more videos like this, click that subscribe button and hit that little notification bell. That way you're reminded every time we put out some banging videos just like this one, just for you to learn and to help you to grow so that you can make stuff like this, folks. Once again, this is Steve with Refined Nature of Santa Fe. Thank you for watching, and have a good one.